Hello there, people of the internet. So my time is short today, but I figure I still have time to come out here and make this comparison just because I've always wanted to. We always hear all the time, hey, AR platform versus AK platform. Before we get started, YouTube, semi-automatic rifle, full compliance with YouTube's community service. And the magazine we're running today is a 20-round magazine with only 10 rounds inside of it because I am a small-time channel and really need to conserve my ammunition. But this here is not a standard capacity magazine. This is a 20-round capacity magazine, which is also in full compliance with YouTube's community guidelines. So we hear all the time AR platform versus AK platform, you know, which is better, pros, cons, etc., etc. But guess what else? This right here went toe-to-toe with on a regular basis. I'm sure you guys know, just because of the title of this video, these M16 style rifles went up against the SKS very, very regularly in the Vietnam War. Now, yeah, there's a lot of different things that I have to say about the SKS and the AR platform, but we're going to go ahead and stick to just comparing them. And we're not going to include the differences in the ammunition, because 7.62x39 versus 5.56, there's a lot of difference. They each have their pros and cons. And during the time period of the Vietnam War, the M16 rifles had issues with their ammunition due to the United States military screwing things over, and a lot of these rifles jammed and got a lot of people killed, and it's just not good. It was not good. It was not good. That's all I'm going to say. But instead of talking about the ammunition, I don't even have the proper ammunition. I'm rocking steel case tool ammo for the M16, and I got some 7.62x39 hollow points here for the SKS. Instead of talking about the ammunition, I'm going to talk about the firearms themselves, because that is what I want to compare here. Now, if you do want to have like a brief discussion about the ammunition, a 7.62x39 is roughly twice the bullet weight as the 5.56. 5.56, just because it drops less, is effective more at further ranges than the 7.62x39. The 5.56 is, of course, a lot lighter weight of a round, being, you know, half the projectile of a 7.62x39. So you can carry more ammunition for the same amount of weight that you would if you were carrying 7.62x39. That covers like all the big basics, and I'm sure somebody on it there wanted to hear it. All right, first off, the SKS is actually based off of, you know, old school, old pattern, old war designs whenever it was going toe-to-toe with the M16 here. This right here is a Russian SKS, not really what the Vietnamese were using. I'm sure that some Russian SKSs were used, but for the most part, they had their own Chinese and their own production lines, and there were a lot of different firearms that the Viet Cong and Vietnamese were using against the United States forces, but this right here is the SKS that I have available to me, so that's the one that we're going to use. This is also not a direct M16 clone. This is a PSA upper and a KP15 lower. There's a lot of like M16 A1 things going on and with this, and there's like A2. Obviously this is an A1 clone. You can very clearly tell with that freaking handguard here. But then we got things like an A2 flash hider, and we got a Picatinny rail on top of the receiver that has the carry handle on it. The length of pull on this is, of course, very A2 as opposed to the A1, and I can very much feel that whenever I'm holding this thing up. There's no forward assist on this, which is something that was with the early A1 patterns, and there's just a lot that goes on. This is a big mix between A1 and A2, and it's not an exact copy, but it's good enough for me to go ahead and talk about the aspects of the comparison of these rifles. SKS is based around a more, at the time period, retro design. Basically all the way up until World War II, countries were top-loading their firearms into a fixed magazine that was built into the firearm itself. After World War II, it became more mainstream that box-fed magazines and carrying multiple magazines as opposed to carrying stripper clips was definitely going to be the wave of the future. But the SKS was just developed during the time period where fixed magazines and top-fed rifles were the norm. Now the SKS does feed from a 10-round stripper clip. The standard capacity of the SKS is 10 rounds, but of course our modern production aftermarket parts, we can have, you know, a 100-round drum on this thing if we felt like it. Standard capacity for the SKS is 10 rounds. Feeds from stripper clips. Stripper clips are notorious for not being that good. and you really got to kind of finagle these in there, but feeding from a stripper clip with an SKS is still a lot faster than trying to feed from a well, from no stripper clip, trying to feed this thing one round at a time. Now, after your rounds are put in there, pull the charging handle back, let it fly forward. You got a round chambered, and you can go ahead and fire. This right here is a very common practice, very common style for self-loading rifles back in that time period. Just load from the top into an internal magazine, typically 5 or 10 rounds, and then you can go ahead and put some lead downrange. I want to point out that the safety on the SKS right here, in this trigger guard right here, is, that is a negligent discharge waiting to happen. You have to pull the safety down in the same direction that you're pulling your trigger here, and that is just screaming to go off in somebody's house, and I imagine that it has at one point or another. The SKS is still using your old school style of leaf sight that, you know, the AK is still using to this day. It's a very traditional style of leaf sight. It's just got a little V-notch in it, or in this particular case, I guess I'd call that a U-notch, and a front post on the front of the rifle, and you line those up, and you can go ahead and put rounds downrange. The SKS is zeroed out, well, it graduates out to 1,000 meters. I'm assuming that these are meters. I don't believe the Russians were still using arshins. And since this is 7.62 by 39, if I were to stick this out to 1,000 meters and take aiming down at my target, my rifle is freaking, my rifle is sitting up several inches. So 7.62 by 39 drops quite a bit at a distance, especially at the 1,000 yards that these guys seem to very enthusiastically be wanting to shoot at. So I'm gonna go ahead and just send a couple of rounds down range here. Hopefully my steel shells bouncing off the tree don't smack me in the face too hard. Oh boy. I will say that the two-stage SKS trigger on basically any SKS like this is going to be quite a deal better than the GI triggers that you find on M16s and M4s and just the standard GI trigger on your AR platform. Kablamski. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and engage this safety. Let's set this here and grab the M16. M16 is significantly lighter than the SKS. I bet that lugging this thing around is going to be a lot easier than the SKS. M16s that were used in Vietnam and whatnot were full auto. This, for obvious reasons, is just a semi-automatic. So yeah, M16 definite perks for being full auto, you know, whenever they worked and they weren't using the sketchy ammunition. All right, M16 does have a dust cover and it is more closed off than to the elements than the SKS. The SKS, the bolt carrier group, is literally right on top of the rifle, and it's very easy to lock that thing up. The vent holes on the side of the bolt carrier also mean that the AR M16 platform here is going to be able to blow muck, funk, dirt, debris, all kinds of stuff off of this rifle. And because of that, this rifle is known to be very reliable when faced with mud and dirt and ingress and whatnot. Charging handle, I actually like the charging handle on the SKS better, as everyone does. The T-handle charging handle on these rifles is very much known to not be great. There is a bolt release for if your bolt is locked open, say on an empty magazine, and you want to go ahead and ram that bad boy home. The SKS does not have a bolt release. With this being box fed, magazine fed, as opposed to stripper clip fed from the top of the rifle, this is box fed from the bottom. That means that you can top this rifle off very easily by pulling your magazine out of the rifle, you know, grabbing yourself a new magazine, popping that bad boy in there, and then you have not only a round in the chamber, but your 20 round capacity as well. During the time period, they were using 20 round capacity as opposed to the standard 30 round that we have nowadays. The SKS, in order to top that bad boy off, you have to like remove all the ammunition from the bottom of the magazine by pulling the freaking bottom of the magazine out. This way you can lock the bolt back open so you can go ahead and ram more ammunition in that thing. Otherwise you'd have to physically hold the bolt back while you single load that SKS, because if you have rounds in there, then your 10 round stripper clip will not really work. unless you want to like partial feed that and then have a partial stripper clip left. I mean, it's possible, it's just very impractical. Versus something like this, pull this mag out, grab a new one, put it in there, and now have 21 rounds, or 20 rounds if you were loading a 19 round magazine for the sake of consistency and reliability. The ghost ring sight or the peep sight on the AR platform I absolutely prefer, but I think that's just because it's close to my face, and me being blind, I can see my sights a lot easier. Recoil on the 223 substantially less than the 7.62 by 39. Okay, between the pencil barrel, the polymer furniture, I think that they were using aluminum back then, but they did have some polymer on it, like the handguard and the stock, and I think the pistol grips on them were also polymer. There's a lot of things with this rifle that is not identical to that time, but this is close enough for me to get somewhat of a good comparison. This rifle, despite being lighter weight, is actually, I'm going to say, more cumbersome and more awkward to hold than the SKS platform. However, the safety on this thing dramatically better than the SKS because I don't have to risk pulling that trigger whenever I want to engage or disengage. Our safety here. Sights on the rifle, just like the SKS, is adjustable out for distance, but in this particular case, it's got a little rotating knob versus the leaf sight that the SKS is using. It also has a peep sight on it as opposed to the leaf sight U-notch that the SKS uses. Windage is adjustable on this rifle with the rear sight versus the SKS, which is the front sight, and you need a separate tool to adjust for windage on the SKS versus the M16 here, which you can literally just do with your fingers, which I'm not going to do because I don't want to throw off the zero of this rifle. Unloading the M16, like I said before, you just kind of pull your magazine out. If you want to pull your round out of your chamber, just pull your charging handle back. You can physically lock the bolt open with your M16 with your bolt release right here. Just press that in the opposite direction and it will actually lock the bolt open. You can go ahead and close it by pressing that same exact button, and now you have an unloaded M16. Go ahead and put our round back inside of our magazine for whenever we ultimately run this again. Unloading your SKS, like I said before, is a little bit more of a process. You could go through one at a time and just cycle this firearm over and over and over, or what you could do, pull this back. There's a little latch right here that you can pull back to open up your magazine. Pull that out. Now you just have one in the chamber that you got to ultimately pull the charging handle back in order to get out. Now I just have 5 loose rounds here. The M16, you do need your magazine in order to use. You also need your magazine inside of this one, but this is built directly into the rifle, so the odds of you losing your magazine are quite small. So if you just have a handful of rounds, you can use your SKS no matter what the situation, whereas the M16, if you're just having a handful of rounds and you lost your magazine, I guess you could single load the rifle, but it would not be ideal. Let's send some more rounds of this downrange, because why the hell not? Go ahead and flip our safety off there nice and carefully. Don't want any negligent discharges here. The wind is moving around my tree and it's messing with my sight. This is not a very stable shooting platform at all. Aha! I hit it that time though. My steel target is kind of in the shading. I can't really see it all that well. Whenever you're out of ammunition, the slide will lock back open, so you can load another stripper clip in there, or if you're like me and out of ammunition, you can go ahead and just push the follower down and close it up, a lot like many other old school rifles. However, nowadays many rifles are fed from an internal box an external box magazine, such as this M16 here. Now once you put your magazine, your loaded magazine, into the rifle, you can charge the handle back, or charge the charging handle back, but if you say expended all your rounds and your bolt is locked in the rearward position versus using your charging handle, you can go ahead and just press your bolt release right here, close that, and now you are ready to go ahead and fire some more rounds. I definitely prefer the ergonomics of the M16 as opposed to the SKS, and the ease of reloading and the sights and the caliber. Just I definitely prefer the M16 over the SKS. If I had to pick one for actual defensive purposes, I would take the M16 every single day of the week. The M16 also having a pistol grip on it, I've noticed in my time of shooting. Yes, with the SKS you can get a pretty good grip and pull it back into yourself. But with this pistol grip right here, it is substantially easy to pull back into myself on this shooting platform that I have right here. So I can get actually a much more stable shooting position, and I can really get in there and pull the trigger without any movement whatsoever. That is very nice, very crisp, very easy to do with this platform that has a pistol grip on it. As opposed to the SKS here, yes, I can pull it back onto me, but I have less, well, it requires more effort to pull it back onto me. And with it being wood and whatnot, with absolutely no texturing on it, and just the angle of the grip of it, like I can feel my hand sliding. This little, what would I call this? Ribbon right here that I have tied onto this is actually from a comm block, you know, surplus tin, you know, that you open with a can opener. I decided to go ahead and tie that onto this, and that actually does add a little bit of grip texturing, so I do have a little bit easier time holding onto this. Now you'll notice I actually take my thumb off the top of the stock right here and hold it onto the side. That's because I don't know if it's just my face or the position I'm shooting at or something like that. Whenever I shoot this thing, if I'm shooting with my thumb over top, occasionally under recoil I'll like smack my face with my thumb and it's uncomfortable. So I just hold it to the side, and doing that, you know, does decrease the stability of your grip on the platform. Not very much, but it definitely does, especially whenever you're trying to pull yourself back. I noticed that I use my support hand here to pull the rifle back a lot more into myself than I do with the M16, which just fell into the thorns and whatnot. The M16, I notice I use the pistol grip a lot more to pull back as opposed to my support hand, and the support hand, pulling back with the support hand, just causes a little bit more wobble, and I'm not quite able to really get as comfortable or as smooth of a trigger pull as I would like in comparison to the M16 platform. I was not expecting that to be the outcome whenever I came out here to compare these rifles, but that is something I noticed when I put these rifles side by side with each other. Alright, well folks, I'm out of ammunition and this video is getting kind of long, so hopefully you guys had fun watching. I know I had fun making this video, so I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, thanks for watching. I got somewhere that I got to be in just a couple of minutes, so I'm going to go do that. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Description down below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and go check that out. I'm gonna go hydrate actually, because it's like 98 degrees out here right now and 100% humidity because this is Florida. It's a hot one today. That breeze does feel good though. Where's the breeze now? It was freaking tearing through here earlier. Oh well, I'm gonna go do what I gotta do. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.